June 19th, 1944, 11:22 in the morning, the Philippine Sea, latitude 12 degrees north, periscope depth. This is a moment where time seems to bend, where the only sound louder than the hum of the electric motors is the beating of your own heart. 200 feet below the surface of the Pacific, in the crushing darkness of the ocean, the most suffocating hunt in naval history is counting down to zero. Inside the conning tower of the USS Cavalla, the air is sweat and tension. Commander Herman Kossler, hands are slick with perspiration. As he grips the handles of the periscope, his eye pressed hard against the rubber eyepiece. He is holding his breath, through the slender steel to breaking the surface. He isn't just looking at the ocean, he is staring at a moving mountain of steel. It is the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, a ghost from the past. One of the architects of the Pearl Harbor infamy, the aircraft carrier Shokaku. In just a few seconds, with a single command from Kossler, history will fork. One path leads to that 30,000-ton Leviathan being sent to the bottom of the sea, altering the course of the Pacific War. The other path leads to destruction. Should he miss, it leads to certain destruction, he and his entire crew ripped apart by the depth charges of the Japanese destroyers prowling above. Life and death, glory and oblivion, are now separated by nothing more than the distance of 6 torpedoes. This is not just a simple ambush, this is a duel of destiny. A submarine fresh from the shipyards, crewed by men tasting combat for the first time, is facing off against a battle-hardened ace. In this electrifying instant, let us turn back the clock and witness how this earth-shattering deep-sea assassination came to be. The story begins months earlier, and the USS Cavalla was still undergoing final fitting at the Electric Boat Company in Groton, Connecticut. No one then could have predicted her illustrious fate. She was a brand new boat, and while her crew had endured rigorous training in the unforgiving arena of the Pacific, they were undeniably green. On February 29, 1944, the Cavalla was commissioned. By this stage of the war, the tide had turned. The United States Navy was tightening the noose, while the Japanese Navy was plotting a massive counter-offensive, codenamed Operation Ago, a desperate bid to force a decisive fleet battle near the Mariana Islands. On May 31st, the Cavalla slipped quietly out of Pearl Harbor. For this submarine, Pearl Harbor was more than a departure point, it was the starting line. It was the starting line of a mission of vengeance. Her orders were clear: patrol the waters east of the Philippines, relieving her sister sub, the USS Flying Fish. To become a critical node in the massive American underwater surveillance net. The charts were marked with potential contacts, ominous signs that a major clash was imminent. On June 15th, 3 days after leaving Midway, the Cavalla received a top-secret flash message. Intelligence indicated that the main body of the Japanese mobile fleet, a force that had been like a ghost since the Battle of Santa Cruz in 1942, had finally surfaced. They were moving toward the Marianas, intent on crushing the American landing forces assaulting Saipan. For the Cavalla, this meant they were sitting directly in the path of the storm. The situation was critical. American troops were fighting for every inch of sand on Saipan. If the Japanese fleet cut into their rear, it would be a massacre. Kossler received cold, direct orders: proceed at maximum speed to a grid 350 miles east of the San Bernardino Strait and wait. It was now a race against time. On the evening of June 17th at 7:50 p.m., after 2 days of high-speed transit and searching, the Cavalla's SJ radar picked up an anomaly at 30,000 yards, roughly 17 miles out. On the glowing green screen, that faint blip looked like the eye. Like the eye of the Reaper opening in the dark. Kossler immediately ordered full speed to intercept. The roar of the diesel engines shortened the distance, closing the lifeline between hunter and prey as the range dropped to 22,000 yards. The radar screen lit up with a sight that would make anyone cold. It wasn't one or two ships. It was an armada. This was the first mobile fleet, commanded by Vice Admiral G. Saburo Ozawa. 9 aircraft carriers, 5 battleships, 13 cruisers, and 28 destroyers. This was the last concentrated essence of Imperial naval power. Their final gamble to turn the tables. And facing them was the solitary Cavalla, a lone wolf breaking into the den of the entire pack. Faced with such an overwhelming enemy formation, the executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Robert Lissar, worked feverishly at the plotting table. They were presented with a nearly impossible tactical puzzle. The Japanese fleet was moving at a high speed of 19 knots, executing sharp zigzag maneuvers. To gain a favorable firing position, the Cavalla would have to sprint on the surface, pushing her engines to the red line to cut across. The enemy's bow before submerging to lie in wait. But this presented an agonizing dilemma, according to standard doctrine. Upon spotting a major enemy force, a submarine's primary duty was to report to warn the fleet. But using the radio meant exposure. The Japanese fleet's high-frequency direction finders would instantly triangulate the Cavalla's position, bringing down a rain of destroyer fire. Guaranteeing the loss of any chance to attack, Kossler stood in the cramped confines of the conning tower. Through the periscope, he could see one of the carrier's recovering aircraft. The plane looked fragile as it touched down on the deck. It was 10 p.m. Kossler made a decision that would define his career. Responsibility outweighed glory. He chose to surface and transmit. He knew that sending this message might cost him the chance to be a hero, but it could save thousands of American lives. The radio waves cut through the night, and minutes later, the secret intelligence regarding the Japanese fleet's coordinates, heading, and size was in the hands of Admiral Raymond Spruance of the 5th Fleet. This telegram became a crucial piece of the puzzle for the upcoming battle. The Great Mariana Sturkey Shoot. The cost, however, was immediate. The Japanese direction finders picked up the signal. The destroyers broke formation like rabid dogs, charging toward the Cavalla. The submarine was forced to crash dive to 300 feet. Above them, the ocean erupted. Depth charges detonated, shaking the hull violently, shattering light bulbs, and causing leaks in the hydraulic lines. The crewed on breathing masks in the dark to conserve oxygen, every second stretching into an eternity. For 3 hours, the Cavalla endured this torture. In her first taste of combat, she was tasting death. By 1 a.m., the destroyers finally moved off, and the sea returned to a deathly silence. The Cavalla surfaced like a phantom, but the radar screen was empty. The Japanese fleet had vanished into the night. But this was not the end. Kossler refused to give up. He ordered a pursuit based on the fleet's projected track. He was gambling, betting that the Japanese carriers would turn into the wind at dawn to launch aircraft, betting that fate would grant him one more chance. June 19th, 8 a.m. After a night of desperate chasing, the Cavalla's luck returned, or rather, the Japanese Navy's doom arrived. The periscopes lit up, and at the edge of the horizon, the massive fleet reappeared. Dozens of aircraft were circling overhead, all flying east toward the American fleet. The Japanese had launched their first wave. The aerial slaughter had begun. Through the periscope, Kossler saw not just the planes, but the beasts on the water. A young recognition officer, Lieutenant David McClellan, held up a silhouette card, comparing it to the image in the scope. His voice trembled as he confirmed, "Captain, that's the Shokaku." Shokaku, the name held a dark weight for the U.S. Navy. She had participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor. She had mauled the USS Lexington at Coral Sea, and she had helped sink the USS Hornet at Santa Cruz. She was a lucky ship bathed in American blood, having escaped destruction time and again. But today, the luck of this 30,000-ton giant had run dry. The tactical maneuvering that followed was a textbook display of nerve. Kossler ordered the boat to periscope depth, raising the eye for only 3 seconds every minute. 3 seconds was enough to update the target's bearing and range. but too short for the Japanese lookouts to spot the feather of spray. Inside the submarine, the torpedo date a computer. Word and clicked, solving complex trigonometric equations in real time. The atmosphere was frozen, everyone knew a single mistake would turn the Cavalla into the 53rd American submarine lost on patrol. 11 a.m. The opening appeared. Just as Kossler had predicted, the Shokaku began to turn into the wind to recover her attack group. This turn exposed her massive starboard side, completely vulnerable to the Cavalla. The range closed to 1,200 yards. In naval warfare terms, point-blank range. Through the glass, Kossler could see the Japanese pilots climbing out. Could see the ground crew running across the flight deck, but he had no time to admire the scene. Just as he prepared to fire, a Japanese destroyer, the URAKs, suddenly cut across the line of fire. 10 seconds to decide, abort or risk it. Kossler chose the risk. He waited with ice-cold patience. And the moment the URAKs cleared his sights, he shouted the command, "Tube 1, fire." It was a moment of calculated fury. Every 8 seconds, a Mark 14 steam torpedo hissed out of the tubes. Each weapon weighed a ton and a half, carrying 600 pounds of high explosive. 6 torpedoes, 6 sickles of the Reaper, sped at 46 knots, drawing fatal white lines through the water, straight for the Shokaku. 11:22 a.m. Kossler took one last look. The wakes were running hot and true. The first aimed at the bow, the second at the island, the third amidships, the fourth at the stern. Then, he gave the order that every submariner dreads but expects to take her down. Emergency deep, 350 feet, rig for depth charge. He knew that what came next would be a retaliatory hell. As the Cavalla angled sharply into the depths, the sonar man heard the knock of death. Not an explosion, but the dull, metallic clang of steel hitting steel, the sound of torpedoes impacting the hull. Then came the roar. The first torpedo smashed into the forward fuel tanks. The second gutted the boiler room beneath the island. The third tore open the maintenance hangars. In seconds, 3 torpedoes had found their mark. For an aircraft carrier, 3 hits are catastrophic. But what sealed the Shokaku's fate was the chain reaction. The ship was in the middle of refueling operations. The hangars and decks were awash with volatile aviation gasoline. The torpedo blasts ignited the fuel, turning the hangar deck into a massive combustion chamber. The shockwaves shattered steam lines, and the giant vessel instantly lost power, paralyzed on the water. But down below, the crew of the Cavalla had no time to celebrate. The gates of hell had opened above them. The escorting destroyers, including the URAKs, swarmed like angry wasps. Their only goal was to pulverize. The American intruder. As the Cavalla desperately sought the safety of the deep, the first pattern of depth charges rained down. Boom, boom, boom. Water is the perfect conductor for shockwaves. Every explosion felt like a sledgehammer to the chest. The lights died instantly, replaced by the eerie glow of Reed emergency battle lanterns. Pipes burst, spraying high-pressure water with a deafening hiss. Glass gauges shattered, raining debris. The temperature inside began to spike. To maintain silence, the air conditioning was killed. The heat rose rapidly to 120 degrees. With humidity at 100%, it wasn't just hot, it was a sauna. Sweat soaked through clothes and evaporated into the thick air. Carbon dioxide levels climbed, and the oxygen thinned. Men began to feel dizzy, nauseous, some fainted from the stifling atmosphere. Yet, no one dared to speak. They took off their shoes, walking barefoot on the scorching deck plates. Dropping a wrench could mean death. They lay on the floor to conserve oxygen, gripping whatever they could, waiting in their steel coffin for judgment. For 3 hours, the Japanese destroyers dropped 106 depth charges. Each one shook the Cavalla to her keel. Commander Kossler remained the anchor of calm, watching the depth gauge in the sonar, making minute course changes to use the thermal layers. It was a battle of wills. While the Cavalla fought for survival on the surface, the Shokaku was entering HERF in agony. Despite the heroic efforts of the damage control teams, the fires were uncontrollable. The inferno of aviation fuel spread through the ventilation shafts. At 10 p.m., a massive explosion tore through the ship. The bomb magazine had detonated. The sound was so loud it was heard by the crew of the Cavalla eat underwater, a terrifying groan of dying metal. This was the end. The flight deck peeled back like a tin can. The hull twisted and snapped. The massive bow rose high into the air, as if screaming at the sky, before slamming back into the ocean. Minutes later, the Shokaku, with her glory, her sins, and 1,272 souls, including 376 elite aircrew, slid beneath the waves. Only 500 men were pulled from the oil-slicked water. It wasn't until 2:30 p.m. that the depth charge attacks finally ceased. The ocean surface was left with only debris. Confirming silence, the Cavalla rose. When Kossler cracked the hatch, the rush of fresh air felt like a rebirth. Through the periscope, the horizon was empty, save for a column of black smoke marking the grave of the Shokaku. Kossler sent a terse message to headquarters, 6 hits, confirmed sinking of Shokaku-class carrier. This was the final chapter of vengeance. In the Turkey shoot, the U.S. claimed overwhelming victory, but the Cavalla's underwater strike was the jewel in the crown. She had not only sunk a capital ship, she had broken the spine of the Japanese naval aviation. Training a carrier pilot took years, building a carrier took just as long. The loss of the Shokaku took with it a generation of veterans. Post-war, Vice Admiral Awa admitted, American submarine warfare was the single most decisive factor in our defeat. And the Cavalla was one of the sharpest fangs in that silent fleet. Yet, the brutality of war is not diminished by victory. In 1987, at a reunion, a retired General Kossler spoke words that resonate through time. We did what we had to do. We sank enemy ships because our country asked us to. We beat them not because we were better men, but because we had better tools. Today, the legendary USS Cavalla has not been scrapped. She rests in Galveston, Texas, at Seawolf Park, a museum ship telling her story. On her awning tower, a battle flag still flies, embroidered with the rising sun, marking her keel of the Shokaku. Inside the museum, black and white photos capture the cost of that day. One photo shows the Shokaku burning next to it. A small caption reads, "Former enemies, now old men, sharing the memory of the day that changed both their lives." The story of the USS Cavalla is not just a technical breakdown of how 6 torpedoes changed a battle. It is a study of courage, luck, sacrifice, and redemption. The wheels of history roll on, and the waves of the Pacific have washed away the traces. But as long as the Cavalla sits there, the legend will never be forgotten. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the silent service in the hunt that broke an empire's back, submerge that like button and ring the bell for general quarters. I'm your historical sonar man tracking the echoes of the past. I'll see you on the next patrol.